Welcome back. Now you join us, okay?
I'm back.
You join us midway on this job. What I'm going to do is some front brake pads in the Tiger. This is just general maintenance. You have to do it now and again. It's part of owning a motorcycle. Changing a set of brake pads is honestly a piece of cake. It really is. Very, very simple job. Not difficult at all. And it's just a labour job. It's one of them housekeeping jobs you have to do. You've got no choice. But if you're going to pay a mechanic to do this sort of thing for you, you'll see from this that I'm going to show you now that a great deal of it is not mechanical, technical skill. It's just labour. It's just donkey, you know, cleaning and assembling, and in hard, and you can do it, and it can save yourself at least an hour's labour, because quite honest, if I charge somebody for a pair of brake pads, I'd probably charge them for about an hour a side. Now I know that's quite a long time, but I do it properly. I make sure they don't seize, they don't stick next time, and I refurbish everything that I can, and you're going to see that right now. So enough waffle, let's get stuck in. Okay, Triumph brake calipers in this instance. Done Suzuki, did loads and loads of stuff on the Bandit. I'm going to try and do this just one more time. Honestly, some of our most popular videos that have got the most hits, some are up over 250,000, 350,000, are on brake calipers. So this is a big issue, and it doesn't hurt to do another one because many people don't look back in the playlist. So here it is, a fresh one in the new garage for this. This is the Triumph Tiger. Now, all brake calipers on different bikes are slightly different in their anatomy, but the kind of family of equipment is roughly the same. You've got, you know, 1 or 2 piston calipers that move either, just to differentiate, this is a floating caliper on a solid disc. You can get, the alternative option is like I had on the Bandit, where you get a semi-floating disc that moves in its own right, and the caliper is solid and fixed. It's not really relevant to changing calipers. You don't really need to know that. It's just what there is. So that's what this is. As you can see here, on the disc itself, it's solidly bolted to the wheel rim. There's no bobbins, there's nothing that moves. This is absolutely solid. And it's the caliper that lozenges right and left in order for the pads to touch the disc efficiently. And there are some little slides and pins. Now, what I'm doing on this is just changing some brake pads. I'm not going to refurbish the calipers, that's another job, that's a long-term job. But I'm going to put the pads in a way that hopefully eliminates the need to strip your caliper apart and start replacing seals. To be quite honest, a well-maintained caliper should last the life of the bike. The seals in there should never go wrong. It's only dirt and neglect that makes them start to leak or jam up, and then you need to replace them. If you look after them in the right way, and when you replace brake pads, take the opportunity to look after them, give them a good thorough clean and lubricate everything, then they should last a lot longer. So look, enough of that, like I said. Let's get on with this. The first one on this caliper, before you start releasing it, these 2 bolts here hold the caliper to the fork leg. Okay, it's quite straightforward, isn't it? These 2 silver 12 mils. Now, the caliper itself, the pads on this are held in by a pin. Here, the pin slides right across the back. It goes through the hole in the top of the pin, in the top of the brake pads. So we need to take that pin out, and I need to do that whilst this is nicely mounted firmly to the bike. There's nothing worse than taking the caliper off, then realising you've got to take a pin out and it's all in your hand. So take that out first. While we're using the fork leg as a jig, take it out. So the pin at the bottom lives inside a little hole down inside here, and over it is this. This is a little cap, a little cover cap. There it is. It's just a slot screwdriver, and it's a tiny grub cap, if you like. You'll see in a second. Now, it's got a slot screwdriver hole in it, and they are very tight. They usually seize themselves up. What happens with a lot of stuff on brakes is they seize up purely because they get hot and cold. The constant heat cycles, they end up getting seized. So get your screwdriver right in, right to the base. Make sure you're touching base in there and that there's no play on the screwdriver. That's as tight as it will fit. If you put a screwdriver in that's thicker than that, you try and get it in, it will sit in the outside of the slot, and when you turn it, you'll mince the screw. So this is the point where you take a little bit of care and make sure that you can feel that part of the blade touch down right at the base of that crack. There we are. And what I'm going to do is through the hole in this screwdriver, I'm going to put another one like that. Give me a little handle, and I'm just going to lean on that as hard as I can and twist it. There it is. All right, a little crack. Now that goes nice and satisfyingly, and it comes out, as you can see. It's just a little cap, that's all it is. You can see a nice little bit of copper slip in there from the last owner. Just want to make the point on this one. I haven't done these calipers on this bike. I've had this now for 2.5 years. I've done about 14,000 miles. I do a lot of miles, but I spread it between a collection of bikes. So this has done about 13, 14,000. These were new when I got the bike. So what I'm doing now is some other mechanics work. So I'm a little bit green as to what's in here, so just being cautious as I go. Take the cap off. Inside, you've got a brake pin. If you look at the last video, down inside here, you can see, can you get a nice light on that, Ben? Mm-hmm. Nice and close. That's a brake pin, like the one we had to weld an Allen key to the other day and take out. And if you look inside there, it's in lovely, clean, proper condition. There's nothing wrong with that, so it should be okay. However, due to several things which we found out, sort of several of you pointed out the last time, is a worn out Allen key. I want to show you this, if I may. Sorry. Can you get a close up on that? Mm-hmm. Now that head is worn out. That's toast. That Allen head, or that Allen key, has done so much work, it started to wear the corners off. It means it's a little bit rounder and it's no longer 5 mils, probably 4.8 or something. Put that in, give it a good leathering, and it's just going to twist and it's going to strip out the bolt. A good mechanic will always replace their tools. You know, like these snap-on vans, they drive around the workshops, they park outside every week and they visit the mechanics on a weekly basis, and you think to yourself, what are they doing, building this stupid collection of tools? When you've got them, haven't you? Not at all. Tools are consumable, and Allen keys are one of the worst offender. This here, on the other hand, is a virtually new one. The head on that is nice and sharp and not worn, and that's a very important point, because if you're going to undo this, now you want that Allen socket cap in there filled completely. So I'm going to use this old ploy of the spanner to give me some leverage, pressing in all the time. I'm going to give this a bit of luck and twist. Now it's moving with a great deal of resistance, but the tool isn't getting stuck in the cap, so it's not the tool rounding out, it's the pin extremely stiff. There it goes. Now that cracking, is it just letting go bit by bit because it's been put in probably with a torque wrench, and I'll come back to this when we do it. So that cracking noise is just the bolt jumping round under so much pressure. It's coming. Now a few of you said, when we had the rounded out one, why don't you just hammer one of these in, which is a Torx bit. And that Torx bit itself will wedge in there and crack it open. So when it's a cap like that, that's great, because it goes crack and then it's free. But these that are tight all the way out, it doesn't work. So, there we are. Bit of effort on that. Yeah. Right. There we go. As you can see, that's quite corroded. Doesn't feel too bad, there's not too much indentation in it, but that corrosion and crud is what was holding it in, not the thread, which is why it's not the thread that's an issue. So heating that to expand away from there is not the problem. That won't make any difference. It's this that's the problem. If all else fails, when you get that clear, you can go the other side of the caliper, put a pin in that side and drift it out if you need to. Those are ways to spin that cat. Right, caliper off next. 2 bolts, 12 mil, pretty straightforward. Simple as that. Pretty much doing this in real time today for you. It's not a difficult job. Great. Copper slip on both bolts, like to see that. It was good. Release that a little. Now, it's going to take the brake hose itself off. It's on this little P-clip. Little star drive on there. Now, I'm going to take this off and hang it on the hose. Just to take it off, wiggle it back, because the pads will be out to a certain point, and the grooves in the pads will fit into the grooves in the disc as it wears. And this outer edge of the disc is always thicker. So you've got to try and work those pads past that thick ridge on the outside of the disc. Doesn't matter if you wiggle it back. There we go. Oh, and they'll drop out. Now, because we took the pin out, they both dropped out already. Let's have a quick look at them. Okay, that wasn't a day too soon, was it, man? Look at that.
Oh.
Right out.
Got your money's worth.
Now like getting your money's worth, babies. Look at that. The little groove is gone on that side, all but. It's like the chamfer on the top edge. But this one, chamfering on the bottom edge, and there's no metal showing. That's not through to the backing material yet. But it's as good as. It's starting to crumble away at the front. So those pads are...
Toast.
Toast, indeed. We're going to put some new ones in. Right, before we do anything else, I've got to look in here. Take a little notice of what you see. When something comes out, you've got, this is the pin path here that it goes through, and there's a little clip there. You just see, and that just fits in there. And you can see that in the centre of it here, where my finger is, there's a little clip, and that clip fits over that, there, like that. If you're not sure, and you're not sure if you'll remember that when you come to reassemble it, take a photo of it in situ, like that. Take a with your phone or whatever, or get your camera girl to focus in on it, and take that out of the way. We'll clean that in a minute, put it back in when the time comes. Now look at the state of these. Before we can put, the difference is here, when your pad is that thick, these pistons have had to come out this far in order to keep that pad touching against the disc. So really talking to you novice guys here who've never seen this before. These pistons, these are the two brake pistons. The fluid gets pushed down into here, into this area, which is the back of these, and it pushes these things out hydraulically, and that forces the pad onto the disc. It ain't hard, is it? Even Penny can understand, can't you?
I'll get it.
Right. Now these here have got to be naturally, because the new pads we're going to put in, I can just grab them. Let's just pull them out of the packet a bit. There's a new one. Now look at the difference straight away. The difference in thickness. So naturally, what we've got to do now is I've got to fit two of them in there and the disc. So you have to push these right back into their sockets. That's the task now. Now it's no use just pushing them back as they are, because what will happen is all this dirt and crud that's on the outside of there will get forced into the rubber seals and it will jam them up. And that's the biggest reason why brakes jam up, is because this dirt gets in around this gum line. So the task now is to clean these up so that when you put the new pads in, you can force those right back into their sockets out of the way, and there won't be anything that's going to jam them up. They'll operate in and out in a normal manner. So let's get them cleaned up first, and you'll see exactly what I mean. First thing is to pump them out just a little bit. So reach up, come on in there. Coming on there. So on the brake lever, if it's the rear, it's the pedal. And you're just going to pump them out a little bit. Nice, look at that, coming out together as well, which is nice. Now, don't pump them out too much. One's coming out a bit more than the other. That's inevitable, there's nothing you can do about that. So what I'm going to do, at this stage, it's going to locate over here. Just spin around, Pen, where I am. Grab this little bit of card. Just bear with me on this. This is the best way ever. Of protecting your caliper. Now this is a rat bike, so I really don't care about the outside of that, but you will, because your bike's probably not a rat bike. So I'm going to do, peel off a bit of duct tape before I totally trash the glue on it. Pop it on there to protect that, and just take that in place on the outside. Then take me big old grips. Now you can use, if you haven't got a pair of these, you can use G-clamps. Standard ordinary G-clamps, the ones you get from the tool store, but these are a little bit more useful, because all I'm going to do is come in on there, use an old brake pad as a lever, because you shouldn't put the teeth of those grips against the front of these pistons. It won't do them any good. These are going in the bin. So I'm going to pop that in there in the way. I'm going to hold on to that. Open them up, just one more notch. And this is just to pump out the other piston. So I'm just going to grab hold of that and hold that piston still, and then see the little gap on the other one? Keep pumping. And they'll leaven up, yeah? So, now we've got that. You see in there, you can see the gum line. You can see the shiny line, which is all good, and this is all the dirt we need to now get off. So, now it's time for Penny's favourite part.
Penny's toothbrush.
Penny's toothbrush, yeah. Where is it? There it is.
Oh, you're not joking.
It's not joking, it's pink. I haven't used it this morning because it's the last time. Right, soapy water in here. Just soapy water, hot soapy water from the sink upstairs. That's it. Don't use the one in the kitchen because Penny will moan at you. There we go. Now clean them all up. Now when you've given it a little bit of a clean, this is brake cleaner. All right, someone saw this the other day and said, "Oh, you're using WD-40." It's WD-40 brake cleaner. They do it as well. Now you can see straight away that you've cleaned off all that crap, but there is a little bit that's hanging on, a little bit left over, and that's a tiny bit of corrosion. So we're going to give them a proper clean, and then when I've done all that and they're all nice and shiny, I can push them back in to their sockets and it won't cause a problem. Okay, now all clean. Cleaned out all the WD-40 from there, rinsed all that out, loads of brake cleaner in it, cleaned all this as much as the dirt can be. There's a little bit of corrosion on these pistons, so just making a mental note of that. They're not expensive, and in the future I may have to replace them, but I'm going to go with just replacing the pads today. So all the dirt's off them, which is what then accumulates up against the seal and causes a problem. Remember, in all these you've got two seals inside. You've got a dust seal, then a hydraulic seal at the back. And these little bits of corrosion here, they're going to interrupt the dust seal slightly, but they shouldn't do any damage to the hydraulic seal yet, because that's all this part in here. So now I'm just going to push these right back. But before I do, here's a little trick for you. You can pop a little bit copper slip on each one, not much, just a little dab like that, and then take cotton bud, little cotton bud, and just run it around this gum line, because we're going to push them in and out now. And you're going to work them in and out of that hole, and it's going to lubricate them into their little holes, get it right underneath there, and you'll push a little bit of copper slip into that just to help them slide back in and out. And I'll tell you again why at the end we use copper slip and not grease. You can use a little bit of brake fluid for this, but to be honest, copper slip works just as fine. Way around the inside. Alright, there we go. Okay, so it's sacrificial pad back on, grips, and just push them back in. So pushing those right back in like that forces back the fluid that was behind them, forces it up here, forces it up the hose, right through the system, back up to the reservoir at the top. Now imagine, if you've bled your system through, if you've changed your brake fluid, which I did, if you remember the old video, since you put the pads in. So if when your pads were halfway worn, you changed or you serviced the brake fluid in some way, you bled it all the way through, and you topped it up to the correct level. Forcing them back further than they were before means that more fluid is going to go up into the system. So a little cursory word, make sure, take the top off that reservoir there and just get a cloth and soak out 3/4 of the fluid. Just take it away and just put it in the bin. And then when these are done, you won't end up pushing them back and overflowing fluid everywhere. Also, a lot of people have contacted me and said they've been forcing them back to the G-clamp for the last 20 minutes and they can't get them to move. It's because the fluid has gone up the system, it's hit the lid, it's just stopped. That's it, and it's actually oozing out the air gaps at the top because there's a little air feed at the top. So make sure before you push the pistons right back, you haven't got too much fluid in your reservoir, otherwise you'll force it right out the top and it will come out the breather and you'll have a mess everywhere, run down your paint, cause a problem. Not an issue on a rat biking pen,
no,
but it is an issue on yours. So make sure that that's the first thing you do before you start the job. Take that top off, drain out or soak with a piece of tissue or a rag, soak out 3/4 of the fluid, just leave it low like that. When you've done these, you can top it up and just pump it when you're ready, but look, that's it. So they're back there now. All that copper slip has been scraped out the way and it's lubricated them in and out nicely, and we can just wipe off the excess so it doesn't end up causing too many problems. Like that, there we go. Now that's ready to assemble your new pads. That's all you have to do, simple as that. You're making sure that when you just move that lever, they're going in and out. What happens, for those of you who don't know, this is obviously aimed at the novices, up in the master cylinder up there, it's like a cylinder with a piston that moves along it. When you pull the lever in, the lever pushes that piston along. That piston pushes the fluid down, pushes those out, job done. But that piston has got a spring behind it that returns it. It's like a return spring. So you push it out with the hydraulic force of your hand, and when you release it, the spring pushes it back. Now, if you've got a fully bled up system, which you should have, then the hydraulic lock in the system will suck those pistons back away from the pad. That's the idea. The pad comes out to the disc, sits against it, comes off about 25 thou and just sits there. When you press the brakes, it rubs against them. When you release the brakes, that spring pushes backwards and it just draws that pad back away from it, which is why it's extremely important to have your brakes bled up all the time and to make sure that those pistons are nice and free to slide back and forth, because when that little weak, feeble spring does its job, it can then suck those back out of the way and your brakes don't bind, and binding brakes are very, very dangerous. Right, sticking the pads in. Right, first job to do before we put the pads in, or in order to put the pads in, is that brake pin, that horrible corroded pin. Just going to stick it in the drill. You can put the threaded end in your drill, as long as you just clamp it gently, not too much. Some safety glasses. Hey Penny.
Yep, I've got my nice Eltons on.
Put your Eltons on.
Yeah.
There it is, just takes a second. And one temporarily prepared pin. Now I'm going to replace this because that was so stiff all the way out that I am convinced that I've stretched the socket cap in there. There's a little bit of free play in that now that wasn't there at the beginning. So that's not going to be so easy to get out next time when it's all seized up with crud. It'll come out okay in normal terms, but I've cleaned it up for now. I'm going to order a pair, the 65mm stainless steel ones, like I put in the back of the other caliper. I'm going to put these in literally in a few days. I can just take them out and slap them in off camera, it's not a problem. But that for now is a great way to refurbish your old one. And all you do, turn your pads on their face. Which way are we going to go? That way in, right. So, copper slip. Now, I'm going to go like that. On that one. Across there, down there, across there. A bit too much. That's that one. And the other one's got the pistons pushing against it. So we put blob there, blob there. Now the reason we're doing this is because it absorbs the high frequency vibration. When these pads get squeezed against the disc, the shiny surface of that against the hard surface of that causes the high frequency vibration. And the best example of that is when you're a kid, if you ever got your wet finger around the top of a vase in your nan's house, you see I did, you get that ming as it goes around. Well, that's exactly it. It's super, super high frequency vibration of juddering, microscopic juddering that leads to a squeal on the brakes. And adding a little bit of copper slip to the back of the pads absorbs that vibration and stops the squealing. So before we do anything else, our little clip, which we had, goes back in, nicely cleaned up. Just snap it back in position. Again, if you really want to, you can buy a new one of them, but I wouldn't buy one unless it's broken. Never had an issue. Inside pad first. Some pads that you'll see come with a little metal plate attached to the back that clips on. Make sure you put it in place. Don't leave them out, they are for a reason, and their job is actually to do what this copper slip does. They absorb the vibration. So they slot, as you can see, up here, this end. They slot into the top like that, and then sit in place down there. Now that's when you see what this little clip does. It presses down on the pads and holds them in place. So when we put the pin in, pop the pin through like that, you'll see that they're not quite in line. Hang on. It is a bit fiddly, sort of left and right, and there we go. And you have to press them down against the spring clip, and it pops through. And then the same for the other one. Pop it in place. Now, before we actually bottom that, what I'm going to do with this again is I'm going to whack a big squidge of copper slip in there. Going to feed it down inside that hole for the thread to take with it. A little bit more on the thread, because this is going to come out in about, how long did the last ones take to come, Pen?
3 or 4 days.
Yeah, so in 3 or 4 or 5 days time I'm going to take this out, and all we're going to do with that is push it back through. That's the one. Yep. and wind that pad in nice and gently all the way home. You'll see it gets to a point and it will stop. Oops, just a sec. Put that back in. It will get to a point where it will seat there. So you'll feel it. You can see that that's seated there. So I'm going to seat it, come off, and I'm just going to go on it. That's it. I'm not doing that up with any more force than that. Clean off the excess. I'll put the cap over that in a minute. Now, making sure that the gap between those pads, if you've got those pistons back far enough, should be easily enough to slop over the disc. So what we do now is pop it straight over the disc. Nice, done. Just leave it sit there for a sec. Again, thinking ahead, you can clean these up if you want to, but these are nice and clean with some previous mechanic that's put that on already. Bolts in, t'other one. Again, fill up the thread with it. And there we are, calipers in. Now your caliper will have a torque setting for these, so observe your torque setting and use it. Done these up so many times, I know where they should be. Chopped up. What I always do, as I'm sure you know if you watch the channel, a little bit of marker paint, Penny's Racing Orange Nail Varnish. There we go, Pen. Look at that. And we're just going to dot the uppermost face of the bolt, the little dot, like that. So you can see, if that is rotated in any way, they won't be uppermost. Simple as that. Straightforward, isn't it? Now the last thing that's quite important is this little cap. All I'm going to do with this cap is pop a little bit of copper slip in the hole, like that. And then pop it in with a screwdriver. And this is to cover up and keep the weather off that socket cap in there. And I want to be able to get this out in a few days' time to pop a new pin in that. So just going to wind that in. And again, that's it. Don't lean on it. You saw how tight that was to crack. Doesn't need any more than that. Last little job. Right. Okay, get it down to a level you can work on it. Whip this back off. As I said at the beginning, took this off. There we are. Now, can you just get a look in there, Pen?
Yep.
Get a look in the top of it. Now, when I drained it out, before I started this job, I put a cloth in there and I soaked that out almost right to the bottom. So now that I've pushed it back and pushed those pistons back for the new pads, that's the situation. It's pushed it 3/4 of the way up. So obviously I wouldn't have been able to push those pistons back as far as that had that been full of fluid. So what I'm going to do at this point, so brake fluid, little top up there, don't need much, that's fine. And all I tend to do with it is make sure it's there at the top of that glass in that point. That's a little bit more. And that fluid's nice. I only changed it a little while ago. So there we are. I top it up to the top of the glass. So that should be just about seen. And then rubber diaphragm back on. Holds it nice and still. And then pop the screws in. Now again, with these screws, don't lean on a monkey boy because they will seize up. And then you'll mince them out. Here we go. Now when I do these up, just as a matter of habit, I do them like that. On the screwdriver, I've got a little knurled bit there. I just use that, that's it. And I have never had a problem. This won't leak. You've got rubber seal in there. And just with your fingers and thumbs on the shaft, do them up. That's it. You can wind them up if you want. The next time you come to undo them, get some spare ones. And if you do get one of those mints out, it's ever so easy. Get yourself a 3-4mm drill bit, about 3mm fine, drill into the minced head, and then that head will spin off on the end of the drill bit. You can then take the cap off, the little stump will stick out. It won't be stiff in there because it won't have corroded into the thread. It will just be the minced head that's a problem that you did up too tight. Once you've drilled the head off, you can then lift it off, get some grips and just wind it out, put a new screw in. So if you're going to do them up with the screwdriver at all, honestly, finger and thumb, folks, you don't need any more than that. That is it, job done. Right, wipe all that crap out of the way. And pump them out. Obviously, pumping the brakes out is essential on any brake job. So what else is it, Pen?
You need to test ride.
You do need to test ride, very, very important. You know we said pump these out before you do the job, but take it out on the road, tentatively, ride it round, make sure everything's working, come on back, stick it back on the bench and have a look at everything you did. Check every fastener you did up. Make sure that that brake, that little dot of orange racing nail varnish that Penny lent me is in the place you put it in and it's not rotated round. And don't just look at it the day after you did the job. Keep an eye on your little dots of marker paint all the time. You'll know where they are. And you'll get to watch them all the time. If you're going to interfere with your brakes, I have a responsibility to make this clear to you. Make sure that when you touch your brakes, when you involve yourself with your braking system, which is your life in the balance, and the life of your pillion, passenger, whatever might be on the back of your bike, and other road users, you have a responsibility to do it right. If you're not sure, don't do it. Leave it alone, take it to a professional. But at the same time, it really ain't hard, is it, Pen?
Not really.
It's really straightforward. It's just nuts and bolts and housekeeping. Keep your brakes clean, keep them working. Important thing, if you feel your bike's resisting, now and again, just go like that. Put your hand on the disc. If you ride up the road and the bike feels like it's resisting a little bit, when you get off it, just feel the 3 discs. If one of them's a lot hotter than the other, there's a reason for that. It's because it's binding and the dust has come out and it's frozen those pads so they're not retracting back out the way. Time to get it off, time to get it clean. Simple as that. It's all common sense, isn't it, Pen?
Sure is.
Anything else?
That's it.
That's it. Did I do all right?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. We'll leave you with all the friends. Take it easy, ride safe. Thanks for watching. See you next time.